Okay, anyway, yesterday we saw a whole sugya of what's considered a rakav, right? That's considered corpse dust that I would be go ahead and slice of and the zebras of a nazir and have to recount again, being karbanis and recount again, and a bunch of abayas, interesting questions. And one of the questions was about a mace, that if it's chaser, then there's no dinner rakav. So I think agav that about missing, we're going to bring something else in. Now, the Mishnah in the first Mishnah of the third parak, I think it's Daf Yomi in Makis, says something very interesting. That the Shita of Shimon, the shear, for example, let's say truma, you eat one kernel of truma, since it's considered one entity in itself, you'll be chayav. In Hilchas Tarubis, we call it a birya. We call it something that is a whole thing. So, for example, if you would have a pot, and if into the pot would fall an ant, you can't be mevatel the ant. The birya is not batel. If you have a whole thing, it's not batel. Now, if it gets broken up and loses shem birya, then it is batel. So we have the following question: if you have a birya, you have, let's say an ant would be a birya, and you cut off a part of the ant, let's say an antenna or a leg of the ant, which won't kill it. Is it still a birya or not? Would it still maintain that capacity as a birya or not? Do we say that we're makbar on the shear that has to be shalem, or the makbar that has to be what? A birya, and it is a birya, meaning as long as it's alive, it's alive. So says the Gemara. We're up to nun amid aleph amid beis, 2 lines in the bottom. Boy Rava, nimala shechasra, a nimala shechasra that's lacking something. Mahu, what's the din? Shi'ura gemirin la. You know what favor.
It seems almost.
Okay, so now, so the question is, do we say shi'ura gemirin la? There's you the share of the birya, meaning, and if you cut off part of it, even though it could still live, it's lost its shame birya because you don't have the share. By birya gemiri la, we have a lachem sheni birya, and you have the birya, it's alive. So that's the question at hand. Do we say once you need the share of the birya, meaning you need it whole, or do we say no? As long as it's alive, it still will retain that share of birya, and you will be chetzi chayiv. If you eat in a mullah, you chayiv 4 malchus, guys. 4 malchus. No, I think I'm not sure. I think 4, but it could be wrong. It could be wrong. No, I think you'll check it up. It could be 4. It could be 5. You could be right, but again, bottom line is you're not in a good place. Right. So I'm Rabbi Yehuda. The Skarta says Rabbi Yehuda in the Skarta Tashma. Now the pasuk says in the parsha of Shratzim, there are 8 Shratzim mentioned in parsha Shmini, which are matama. That's called Tumas Sheretz and matama till the evening. The first pasuk says Kol Asher Yiga Bohem. Anyone who touches Bohem is machma, a complete entity. And then the pasuk says, Yochel Bekul, and I may think you need the whole entity to be chayiv for a sheretz, meaning you need a whole complete sheretz. So, for example, let's say a mouse is a sheretz. I would say when it says Bohem, anyone who touches an achbar, a mouse, would be tamei. I would think you need a complete mouse. Tamid Loimar, the pasuk says, V'chol asher yipol mayhem. And as we know by now, mayhem means miktsas mayhem, part of them. So you have a conflicting psukim. On one hand, the behem is mashma, you need a complete entity. Mayhem is meaning even partial from them. If it falls into a kli, and it would be matam of the keres, right? So that's the question at hand. How do you reconciliate the lashon of in Parsha Shmini, the behem and the mayhem? Says the Gemara. I mayhem yachol miksasan tamalayma behem. So you got a problem. If you think behem means all of them, it says mayhem. If you think part of them, it says bohem. How do you reconciliate the apparent contradiction? Till you touch part of them, shehu kikulan, which is like all of them. Meaning, guys, one of these shratzim will be a certain size, and that will be its whole size. It'll be whole size. That's the bohem. And if you touch that amount in part of one of the other ones, you would be tamei. Again, bohem, we're going to go ahead and figure out the whole, meaning a whole entity is a certain size, and the mayhem is if you have, let's say, a mouse, and you take that size from the mouse, part of the mouse, you would be tamei. What is that speaking? And what is that size? The shir chachamim b'chida'atsha. The shir of the chachamim is the size of a lentil bean. Shekena chaymet. The weasel the chaymet, I don't know, is a mole, I think. When the mole is created at the time of its conception, it seems to be the size of a barley bean. So the shratzim, when it comes to shiurim, there's a tremendous chumrah. Not kazayas, not revius. Revius is even larger than a kazayas, right? The size of a barley, not even a barley bean, smaller than a barley bean. Where do you get such a small size? Says the Gemara, I'll tell you why. You have a chaymet, which is one of the shmona shratzim. When it begins its life, it's this size. That's we believe this is a bechida atsha. So that's the behem. That's the complete chomet. Good. Now, if you would take the larger one, the namola, the mouse, the achbar, the mouse, if you would take that part from the mouse, that's the mayhem, you would be tummy. Good. Now, why do we see from this? Shmamina, shi'ura gemirila, shmamina bechida atsha, meaning, if you would take a little piece of the chomet, bechida atsha, yes, it would not be tummy. Why? Because the hakpada is the bechida atsha. If you have this chomet, this moil, that or this mole, you go ahead and you start from this really small size, right? And you would take off a little leg, let's say, it's going to live. Nonetheless, you don't have the share bechida atsha anymore, so it would be wouldn't go ahead and transmit tumah. So you see from this, you have a raya that it has to be whole. Whatever it is, the shear of a birya has to be whole. So if you take an ant and take off the leg, it would lose its shem birya and you wouldn't get malchus. Right? Okay, good. Says the Gemara, one second, you have no raya. Let me do it outside. You know that pud on the shear bechida atsha, it can't be alive yet until it's that shear. That's the most minimal shear. The chaymet is not considered alive until you put the neshama in it. So it's not the pshat you need the shear bechida atsha. There is no such, excuse the pun, animal unless it's a bechida atsha. It can't be alive until that period in time. Masha'en came the larger one who has no problem being alive, the shear bechida atsha. There's no akpad in the shear. Your kasha is like, your raya is this. It has to be, if you see it's less than a bechida atsha, it's not, it doesn't transmit tumah. It must be why? There's akpad to be on the shear. And the answer is, maybe that akpad is not on the shear. Meaning that without bechida atsha, there's no life in the chaymet, in the mold, there's no life until it's that size. So mamela, it doesn't exist. So that's the minimal starting point. So if it's less than that, it's not considered a sheretz. It only becomes a sheretz at this point. Mashenkin, if you have on the hierarchy of shratzim a mouse and something larger, a lizard which is larger, then enochinami, it could be if you take off part of it. Let's say the lizard, the tail comes off automatically. If you take off the tail of the lizard, it would still be a birya. So you have no raya. So that's the lashon. So Amar Rav Shmaya kiba in shiurab. When do you need the share bechida atsha? The belay have bechida atsha glay mitama. Why? Because the lay nafla ban neshama, because it doesn't have any life yet. It's not considered a sheretz yet. It's nothing yet. Mashen kain, right? The aval nafla ban neshama. Once you have life in it, like let's say a larger one, loy, right? Loy. So that one maybe not. And the Gemara answers, leaves off Tiboy Lach with a question. Tiboy is the teku of Nidarim and the Naziris fame. The lashon of Tiboy means teku. We're not parsha the shaila of a birya loses part of it. Does it retain the shem birya or not? That remains a violation.
When they say take it out.
Yeah. Okay, now again, while going through the list of all the things that would go ahead and be Saisa the Naziris, and you have to start counting again. So just let's go over the Mishnah on Mem Tes. Let's see what we remember. The Mishnah on Mem Tes on the base. Al elu tumis hanazir megaleach, al ames vel kazais min ames. Al ames we said is either a nefil or a roiv that has that roiv minyan roiv binyan, or kazais min ames. Val kazais netzel. Netzel again we said is either basa that is liquefied, or samoel, some type of extract that comes out of it, the mace. Val moli tavid rokov we said machloikis is a malchafna where it's pisas yad. And now we get to what ala shidra al gagolis, on the spine and on the skull. And here's the shaila: do you need the skull and the spine, or just one or the other? Again, we're talking about tumis oil. This is a shaila even regarding the Mishnah in oilus. There's two things over here. Regarding the Naziris, we want to know, does it slice in the Naziris? And in the oilus, we want to know whether it's mitama, the oilus, where the oil, mitama, not every tumah is equal. Not every tumah is matama tumah soil. If you have an etzim kasoira, it's not matama tumah soil, right? No, but certain parts of the mace is. So, question: when we say tumas oil, do you mean a spine and a skull, or do you mean either one? That's the shaila at hand. The Gemara is going to try to be paisha the shaila. Okay, that's a shaila. You read the Mishnah. Does it mean one and two, or does it mean both together simultaneously? Iboilahu says the Gemara in Beis Amin Aleph. Iboilahu Shidra v'Gilgalis Tanan. Do we learn Shidra and Gilgalis? You need both of them. By Dilma oy Shidra oy Gilgalis. Maybe one or the other would be enough to go ahead, be metamatum oil, and in fact be make the nut be sliced to Naziris of the Nazir. Amar Rabbi says Rabbi Tashma Shidra shegired roiv iloim. Now the Shidra is the spine, and along the spine, of course, you have the vertebrae. Now, let's say you have the majority. You broke off the majority of the bone of the vertebrae. You broke off the majority of the bone. So so that halacha is tahira. It loses its shame Shidra, guys. It loses its shame Shidra vis-a-vis Toma. It would lose. It won't be considered a Shidra. So, because why? Because you broke up row of the bones. Okay, I dove on Nun Beis Amid Aleph. We just began the 2 dots about 10 lines down. The shaila is the Shidra al Gilgalis is a what? Do you need both the spine and the skull, or either or to matama? That's the shaila. So we're trying to be quite.
Where are we?
Well, on Nun Beis, and Sechta Nazir, Nun Beis Amid Aleph. Amar Rava Tashma. Shidra shegired roiv iloyin. The Shidra, the spine, that you broke off the majority of the bones. Tahira, it's tahar. Ubekever, however, if it's broken in the grave, afilim shubaros, even if they're broken, so dislodged completely from the spine to meya, keva, because the keva joins them. Guys, in other words, there's a loch chamash misinai that it's tremendous amount of loch chamash it joins them together. In other words, the kever is mitzarif them all together. So when it's in the grave, it's considered all as one. Okay, so that's the now again we want to be pushed to the shiloh. Do you need both or one? Taima mishum degired. The reason why it's tahar is because you broke it. Hala gired, but if you didn't break it, tameh. Now, what were we discussing, guys? The shidra, correct? Meaning a single shidra. Why was it tahar? Because you broke the bones. If you didn't break the bones on a single shidra, it will be tameh. So let's be pushed to the shaila. Independently, you do not need both of them. Shmamina oy shidra oy gilgalis katani. Right, guys? Very nice raya l'chayra. Discussing the shidra, and you said if you break the bones, it's tahar. What's the inference? If you don't break the bones, it's tameh. We didn't mention gilgalis, a skull at all. So obviously it must be the shidra independently of the gilgalis would be matama. Tumas oil, and also hence will be matama the nazir as well. L'chayr, it's a very good raya. Says the Gemara, no, not such a raya. Ha loikatani. Now I have ha loikatani. So lashon naziris is mishona. They're missing little words over here. It's mashma the following. You didn't learn imgire tameya without gilgalis. You didn't mention anything. Ha loikatani. In other words, what's your raya? You didn't mention Gilgalis at all. You only mentioned Shidra. You didn't say anything about the Gilgalis. But how come Ashlan? The Chigired Tahira, if you have them both, and you break the bones of the spine, it's tahar. Idach, and whether you need the Gilgalis or not, Tibayilach is a shaila. In other words, the fact that we didn't mention the skull is not coming to paskin. You don't need the skull at all. It's saying a din in the shidra. Let's say it could be you have the skull and the shidra. And even though you have the skull and the shidra, if you break the bones, it's going to be tar. It's going to be tar. So says the Gemara, that's the chiddush, that as long as you break the bones, but idach, but whether you have it's tameh without the skull, or right with the skull, that's a shaila. Tashma, again, another attempt to be pushed at shaila. Do you need both, or singularly they would be matama? Tashma, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Shish Devarim, Rabbi Akiva Matama. There's 6 things that Rabbi Akiva was Matama. 6 things. The Chachamim Matarin, and the Chachamim said with Tahar. The Chazah by Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Akiva changed his mind. He had Charata, and he agreed that it's Tahar, and he agreed that it's Tahar. Umaisa, there was a Maisa. Shevia Kupa Malaya Atzamas the Beis HaKnesses. They brought a basket full of bones to to the Beis HaKnesses, Shel Tarsiyim, of the leather workers. V'nichua ba'avir, they left it in this airspace without a roof, because in case it had the proper shear, it shouldn't be Metama to Misail. V'nichnis Tudis HaRoifei v'chal HaRoifei mimai, and the Tudis was a doctor, and the other doctors came in, V'amru, and they said, Ein kan shidra mimeis echad, you do not have one spine from one mace, and okay, Taima deleka shidra the mechada, right? You don't have the shidra from one mace. Ha'ika, if you did have the shidra for one mace, oy shidra oy golis the mechada nazim megalech aleh shmamina oy shidra oy golis tan independently. In other words, what did he mention? You didn't have a shidra, you didn't have a golis, so he mentioned that independently. So it must be independently. So therefore, you need what? No, it would be time. You want to bring a raya. What do you want to bring a raya? You want to bring a raya that if you did have the proper share independently, it'd be tamei. Again, what here it would not be tamei. But again, but that's not the point. The point is the inference. The inference is that what? Because it wasn't for the mace. Okay, we'll see Rashi in a second, guys. We'll tell you this in a second. It says, well, let me buy shidra goyless the mace echad leka. You don't even have the shidra from one mace. Could be independently what you don't have from either one. Okay, so you have no raya. Okay, let's see the mice that's going on over here. Let's see Taisus. Maisa the Taisus guys. Maisa sheviu kupa malaya with samis the Beis HaKnesses shel tasiyim. Somebody sent me Bobby Orbach sent me a cute shot. Why did you have these people? They had people who of the same guild. They would work together, right? They would daven together. So that different shuls from different professions. So he said, well, since they were in competition to each other, it would guarantee they would be angry at each other and they wouldn't be talking in shul. Right? So that's why they daven together to guarantee no talking in shul. There'd be no reason to go ahead and talk to the competition. That was a funny line. Okay, anyway. Meister sheviu kupa melea at samas the Beis HaKnesses shel tasiyim pirish soifer nechayshis kapasmiths. V'nichua ba'avir. I said leather. I meant kapasmith, not leather workers. Kapasmiths. V'nichua ba'avir b'mokam shein gagalov. They left them outside in a place where there was not a gag. Pen yitmu ba'oil, lest they get what tomei tumas oil. Hanichnas and sham nichnis tudis harayfei. Actually,
the guys are going to come down and go there.
Nichnas to the sarayfe v'chal harayfe mimai v'amru ein kan shidra mimeis echad. Ubepirish. So what do you mean? What do you mean one mace? What are you discussing? Upirish mishnayos matzasi says Taisus he found the hachi yisa b'sifri. Amru hayel v'yesh kan mitarmin u'mitamayin. Now, who is standing there in the Beis Knesses? Some people who are mitama and some people who are mitaher, right? Namoid leminyan. Right, and let's stand up and count. What's the halacha? So pirish mekiva chachamim shenechel pirish mekiva chachamim shenechelku b'shiru v'goyles haboim mishnei mesim. Guys, if you have bones from a skull and a spine from two mesim, it's not tamei according to the chachamim. Rabbi Akiva says what it is. And guys, that's the Pesach understanding why they brought this in over here. In other words, if the shidra and the Gilgoylis had bones from Tumesim, it's tahar. Rabbi Akiva said later on it's tamei. Good. So Tudis came in and they left it out there, and he said, "What? It's not even from one right now." So what happened? So it continues to Taisvis. With Samech Maisila, we're going to see the machlokes in a minute. Masechta Oilus Perek Beis Nami to Tchayu Tchila. So his Tchilim Rabbi Akiva Tchila. They asked Rabbi Akiva first, V'tier, and he said it's tar. Amrullah Hayil Va'atahu Shayisi Mitameya Tiharta Yetahirin. In other words, you were the daya that said Tameh. They asked Rabbi Akiva first. He probably was the god Ladar, right? He stuffed the biggest. And what did he say? Tahar. So he said, "Oh, 1 second, you changed your mind. You said Tahar. We don't even have to bother counting because we held it was Tahar also. We held it was Tahar also. Good. We held it was Tahar also. Now, what's the diak? The reason why is it wasn't from one mace. But if it was from one mace, one alone would do the job, right? Now let's see back in the Gemara now. This is back in the Gemara. But Amru, Tuda said parallel to the Taisus Tahira. En kan shidra mimeis echad. Time of the leka shidra the michada right. Ha'ika oy shidra oigel goylis the michada nazem megalech aleha. If you had one from one or the other, shmamina oy shidra oigel goylis tanan. The reason why it was not didn't transmit tuma, guys, because you didn't have the shear. If you did have the shear from one mace, again, two not from one mace, it would be you need both a shidra and a gilgalis. You see, no, either one would do the job. A piece of the shidra from one or a piece of the gilgalis from one would do the job, right? But you don't have that. So let's be medayik. You don't need both. On that, the Gemara answers, continue loy me boy kamar. Read it, you don't have to tell me. Loy me boy shidra v'gilgalis, both together doing mace echad leka. Not only don't you have what from a shidra and a gilgalis from one, you don't even one foot. That's but not to be placed that you would need what? That you would need one, maybe you need both. Good, very good. Okay, Toshma. So we had now above, we had the above, we just stated we had 6. And now we're going to say what those 6 are. Toshma, the Gemara, this is the extension of the Brisa. Miminyana, now we're going to count what? The 6. We're going to count the six places. What are they? Umahin shisha devarim sheribi Rabbi Akiva mitame v'chacham mitarin al evim min ames sheba mishnei mesim, an evim min ames that you combine from 2 mesim, val evim min achai sheba mishnei mesim, evim min achai that you combine from 2 live people. V'al chatzi kavat somais sheba mishnei mesim, a chatzi kav. Remember, for a nazir to megaleach, it's chatzi kav, not a roiva kav. A chatzi kav from 2 mesim. Well, revius dam haba mishnayim. Again, what the whole machloikus is if it comes from 2. So the Chacham said it comes from 2, it's tahar, and Rabbi Akiva says it's tameh. Right? Val etzem kisoira shenechlach l'shnayim. The etzem kisoira that's divided into 2. Now that came up that shenechlach l'shnayim, right? The etzem kisoira that was divided into 2 pieces, even though it came from one mace. The hashidro hagagoylis. Now, if you do the count, let's do the math, guys. Let's do the math. 1. Eva mina hames, Eva mina chai, chatzi kavat somais, vias dam, etzem kisoira, shidra v'gilgoilis. That's 6. But if you count them as independent, that's 7. That's going to be a kasha. So it's mashma. You would need them both together. Okay, it's mashma. You need them both together. Amid beis, the isal kedaitach. And if you're going to say oy shidra, oy gilgoilis, if you're going to say independently, hani shiva havoyim. You're not a total of what? Of 6. You have a total of 7. Good. So the chayr, you have a raya that you need both in order for tuma. You need both. The Gemara is going to slug it up. You have no raya. 4 terutzim, guys, and the sim in those 4 terutzim is yachid shehu hileach ve'echad. Now, teretz number 1, kikatani. The list of 6 is kol hecha de pligi aleha rabin. That's only when chachamim majority argue on him. La'afuke to exclude etzem kisoira de yachid hu de pligi aleha. In other words, it's listed here as one of the things that would be mitama, but in fact it's not. It doesn't add to the number 6, because when we listed 6, we mean there's 6 places that the Rabbim argue on Rabbi Akiva, and the 6 we just listed, guys. One of them is what is etzem kisoira. That's an individual. So delete that, and now if that's 5, then you'll have the shidva l'goylis will be a total of 6. It'll be, independently. You wouldn't count them as 7. You'll count them as number 5 and 6, rather than what 6 and 7. Okay, where do you see that?
Back together again. The gang's back together again.
What?
Sorry.
Okay, I thought it was Meya. It was Shragi. Sorry, Meya. Anyway, what does it say? The Tani, etzem kisayir shnechel l'shnayim, etzem, the size of a barley bean that's divided into 2. Maybe Akiva mitama, maybe Akiva is mitama. For Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri mitaher. So it's not Chachamim who are arguing, guys. It's the Tana Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. So the 6 is only when there's majority that's arguing Chachamim over here. So this is not in the list. So that's the first one, the siman of Yachid. V'ba Yisema, second teretz, Kikatani Eva min Ames, Eva min Achai like Kitani. Meaning, if you learn Eva min Ames, it's unnecessary to learn Eva min Achai because it's Nichlal, says the Rosh, in Eva min Ames. So don't list that as two, list it as one, and then it could be that Shidra Gailos will be separate entities. That's number two. That's Shahu, right? Hiba Yisema, this is the Gilua. Kikatani Kolechad in Nazim Megalech al Hiloi. Lafukim Etzem Kisayra Deloi. The six are the Nazir will go ahead, and if he's underneath the oil, he'll be Tane, and it'll counteract his Naziris. If you're underneath the oil with Etzem Kisayra, you're not Tane. It's not Metamatemis oil, and therefore it's not included in the six, and therefore Gilgailos and Shidrot. So that would be Megaleach. And the final answer, the fourth answer, Biba Yisema, Kikatani. When do we learn Kolhechid the Hodabay that Rabbi Kiva had Charata? Guys, why did we say that the Chachamim were Tama, was Mataher, Rabbi Kiva was Matama, the Chazer Rabbi Kiva to masking that it's Tahar. But if you looked at the list, there's one place he was not. If you look at the list, there's one place he's not. Revius Dam to exclude the Revius Dam, he didn't have Charata. Damalei Rebbe, the Bakapara, like Tishas Revius Dam the Chazara. Don't list Revius Dam as one of the places that Rabbi Akiva changed his mind. Shari Lemudai Shari Rabbi Akiva biyadai. We have the Lemuda Rabbi Akiva in his hands that he said a Revius Dam from two Mesim is Metama. We just had this Gemara, guys. Machlekes Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Akiva. What does Rabbi Akiva do with this pasuk? They'll call Nafshais. Nafshais is Lashon Rabbim. Meis lo yavai. So therefore, guys, the final teretz. If you list Shidvil Goylis as separate and you have seven, go ahead, delete Revius Dam, because Rabbi Akiva did not have Charata. He had Charata on all other six, but this one he did not have Charata on. He kept that, and the Mela, that would be the last one of the Echad. That would be the Echad. I don't know. The Echad. Okay, so those are your four terutzim to answer up the kasha. Now, Reb Shimon, who was the Talmud Muvak, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, Reb Akiva, Ad Yomav Chayi Matama. Now, all the days he was Matama, I guess they asked Reb Shimon what Reb Akiva held by Revius Dam, and he said all his days is Matama. And if he changed his mind once he died, I don't know. It's a little funny, right? In other words, in his lifetime he did, he changed his mind, maybe, So anyway, listen what happened for this. So Hushchu Shena of Mefei Taniyas Tisai. Tana Hushcharoid Shena, the teeth of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai were blackened with all the tinus that he fasted because he spoke in such a way about Rabbi Akiva as Rebbe. Like in a flippant way. He said, like, oh, in his lifetime he was, but if he's dead, then I don't know. So he spoke in a flippant way, and therefore he look at Taisvis. Tana Hushchu Shena Shal Rabbi Shimon B'fnei Tani Yosef, because of the many fasts that he undertook. There's not derech eretz to speak about his Rebbe in this way. And he fasted many, many days. Okay, meanwhile, we have not been pushed to Shaila, getting back whether you need their independent or singular. We have not been pushed to Shaila. Continues the Gemara. Tashma, the Tanya, Beis Shammai says, Roiva atzamois, minu atzamim. You have majority of the bones from bones, or that's roiv minyan, pashtis, oy mishnayim, oy mishleisha, or from two or three, not people but bones. And we'll see what that means in a second. Roiv min agavia, majority of the body. However, may roiv habinyan, from the majority of the bones that give the height of the individual, or may roiv haminyan, or the majority of bones in the individual. Amar Rabbi Yeshua, Yicholani lasleis divrei Beis Shammai, v'divrei Beis Hillel ke'echad. I could go ahead and say it's not a machlokes. That Beis Shammai is describing roiv binyan, and Beis Hillel is describing roiv minyan. When Beis Shammai said mishnayim or mishleisha, you know what he meant? Which bones did he mean? Oy mishnayim shokim, either the two shins, v'yerech echad, and one thigh. If you think about people, the height of people are in their legs. The height of people, most people, I guess, are their legs. So roiv of the height would be let's say you have two legs, so roiv would be like the two parts would be 3/4, right? You have 4 parts, right? You have 2 shaykim and 2 yerechim. So all you have to do is get either 2 of each, and that would be 3/4. That would be the roiv, right? You can't take 2 and 2 is half. So you have to have you would take what? You take 3 out of 4. So when Mishnah said roiv 2 or 3, what did he meant? What did he meant? He meant either 3. It means 2 shaykim and 1 yerech, or 2 yerechaim and 1 shayk, which would be roiv binyan. And hoyel v'roiv goiva shaladam he goiva. Beis Hillel says min agavia. When he said min agavia, he said oy me roiv binyan, oy roiv minyan. Hoyel v'yeshlam b'pirkei yadayim v'raglayim. Since you have what in the yadayim v'raglayim. Okay, we'll see what this means in a second. Let's first see the raya. Shami Yomer afilu etzem min hashidra oy min al gogoyles. So L'chayr Beis Shammai says an etzem from the shidra or from the gogoyles. So let's be poishit that what that you need either or. Says more shiny Shami de machmir. So Shami is machmir. For the Gemara of lishit mina, right? Let's be poishit from that. Lishit time of Shami de machmir. Parabonan adika shidru v'gogoyles. Pirish. Beis Shammai is the one who said what? Either or. Must be the Chacham say you need both. So now it's less far from Beis Shammai what the Rabbanan would hold. If Beis Shammai says you need a piece of both, and the Chacham disagree, it must be that what? You need both. You need both. Again, you need both. He's being makel. Shammai is machmir. That the tumah would be what? The tumah would be as a result of what? Of either or. And the Chacham being makel, you need both. That's a kula that you need both. There's no law. You have no raya. I come like pligi rabban le'adav Shammai. Ela be'etzem echad. Yasim min hashidru min hagogoyles. They only argue whether one bone will do the job. Aval heicha de isya beinecha. But where you have a whole gogoyles, a whole shidra, I feel the chadamina, it's possible even one. In other words, what did Beis Shammai say? Even if you have one bone from one shidra or one bone from one gilgoylis to be metama. So you wanted to say the Chacham would say you need both. No. Ken Zayin the Chacham would say a bone you don't need, but you need a whole one. But you would need each one independently would do the job. So you have no raya to a shaila. Okay, just going over, what was the whole what was the conversation over here? Why was Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya saying that he could go ahead and make a pshara? So this Taisus has some very interesting tumadik information. You always wonder, where do you have roiv binyan of the body? You know, where do we say is 248 in the body, so majority B would be 125. 125. We're going to see from that 125 is in your fingers and in your toes. The fingers and your toes. We're going to see. Let's see Taisus. Taisus Beis Shammai Yoimrim, Beis Hillel Yoimrim min agavia me roiv minyan. Again, this is Rabbi Yehuda making a pshara between the two. Hoyel v'yeshnei beroiv minyan. Since you have the majority of the minyan, the hainu, mipirke yadayim v'raglayim. You have in the hands and the feet, you have the majority of the bones. Beis Shammai Iri beroiva haba meroiv habinyan. And Beis Shammai is not describing roiv of the majority of bones. He's describing roiv of the majority of the height. Beis Hillel Iri beroiva haba meroiv haminyan. Umara machad of late pligi, and they're not disagreeing at all. They're both describing two possible ways of tumah, either the majority of the bones or the majority of the height. Now, where do you listen to this? In Tanina, roiv haminyan, below roiv habinyan, in the feet and in the hands, you're going to have the majority of bones without having the majority of height. The parsas haraglayim, in the feet, yeshla lamid. You have a total of 30. Shisha b'chol etzba. Each one of the toes has 6, and you have 5 toes. So you have 30. Now you have 2 sets of toes. You got 60. You get 60 toes, right? But pieces yad and a person's hands, his knuckles, fingers, shloishim. The same thing. You have 30. Why? Shisha b'chol etzba, and you have 2 hands. So you have 60 and 60 is 120. Harikuv chafivarim b'yadayim v'raglayim. So if you only need 125, it's not a big. It's very easy to get it, but you have the majority of your bones in your hands.
It's made in 252, right? And 248, right?
About because of the rib?
Yeah, I think that the man had more.
Don't know.
More, right? Is that right?
I'm not sure. Anyway, the next piece of Gemara I'm going to hold off on. It needs a little more time. But now the question is, fellas, what works better, tomorrow morning or 4:30? But morning work. If a lot of guys are not going to come 4:30, I'll say it in the
We
morning.
used to do the summer schedule. in the
Summer
afternoon.
sale was at 4:30, but again, the question is, will more people make it at 4:30 than at 9:30 or 10?
Oh, really?
Right. Okay, we'll still do the morning. Okay, we'll still do the morning. Hatzlacha, Rabbi Rosenzweig. Doc,
Yeah.
give Rabbi Rosenzweig a bracha. He's going for your job. He's going.
Go for my.
Your
Should be loose and goose.
That's what he tells all his patients.